Dairy Industry Restructuring New Sunset Provisions Amendment Bill, second reading.
The Honourable John Carter.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Dairy Industry Restructuring New Sunset Provisions Amendment Bill be now read a second time. Mr Speaker, this bill had its first reading on the 14th of October 2010, after which it was referred to the Primary Production Committee for consideration. The committee received and considered 13 written submissions and heard eight oral submissions on the bill. This bill extends the market share thresholds for the expiry of the pro-competitive provisions in Part 2, Sub-Part 5 of the Dairy Industry Restructuring Act, the DIRA. It also provides a new provision for expiry once the new market share thresholds are met. Sub-Part 5 of the DIRA promotes dynamic efficiency of the New Zealand dairy industry by regulating the activities of the dominant market player, Fonterra. It ensures that, despite its dominant market position, Fonterra operates in an environment that is contestable, that is, one where it faces potential competitive pressure. This environment drives Fonterra and other dairy companies to improve their economic performance. Sub-Part 5 of DIRA is, however, subject to sunset clauses because of this regulatory intervention is necessary only until competitive pressure can be put on Fonterra by existing or potential competitors. The current sunset clauses could be reached by the 31st of May this year in the South Island. If that happens and no other action was taken, the DIRA pro-competitive provisions would expire in the South Island. The government considers that, without the regulatory provisions contained in the DIRA, there is currently unlikely to be enough competition to ensure the efficient operation of the New Zealand dairy markets. This bill resets the market share thresholds for the expiry of Sub-Part 5 of the DIRA in each of the North Island and South Island to 20% of the milk solids being collected by independent processors in a season. This means that if Fonterra is collecting less than 80% in the North Island in a season, the pro-competitive provisions will no longer apply in the North Island. And if Fonterra collects less than 80% in the South Island in a season, then the pro-competitive provisions will no longer apply in the South Island. Under the existing market share thresholds in the DIRA, milk collected from within the boundaries of the West Coast Regional Council is excluded from the South Island market share threshold. This is because when the DIRA was introduced, it was considered uneconomic for independent processors of the West Coast to purchase milk from farmers in other parts of the South Island and transport it across the Southern Alps. The consultation process for this bill told us that independents can now economically collect milk outside the boundaries of the West Coast and transport it back to the plants, or transport it back to their plants. We are also aware of discussions between processors and farmers from both the West Coast and Canterbury about the transfer of milk supply between those regions. These points demonstrate that there is a single market for raw milk in the South Island. For that reason, as recommended by the Select Committee, this bill includes milk collected in the West Coast in the new market share threshold for the South Island. Another key feature of this bill is that it requires the Minister to request a report of the state of competition in New Zealand when the new market share thresholds are met in either the North or the South Island. This will provide the opportunity for the government of the day to consider whether, when the new market share thresholds are met, the dairy industry is indeed ready to move to a regulatory regime consisting of a generic competition law only, rather than the additional industry-specific DIRA. Some submitters are concerned that there is no time limit for when that report must be completed. Having no deadline could result in uncertainty for the dairy industry while it awaits the report's recommendations. For that reason, the Select Committee recommended that the bill now includes a time limit of 12 months within which the report must be provided to the Minister. Some submitters were also concerned that the nature of the industry could change considerably even without the threshold being met. As per the Select Committee's recommendation, the bill therefore provides that the Minister must request the report either when one of the market share thresholds is met or in June 2015, whichever is the earlier. If the report is requested in 2015 without the market share thresholds being met, this would not automatically trigger expiry of the pro-competitive measures, as the automatic expiry process is tied to the market share thresholds being met. However, the Government could, if it chose, on the basis of the report's recommendations, take action such as promoting legislation to bring about the expiry of the pro-competitive measures. This bill also introduces a requirement that all processors must keep a record of the total amount of milk solids they collect in a season. They must provide this information to the Minister of Agriculture if requested. This is to ensure that the Minister can assess the information necessary to monitor the market share thresholds for the expiry of the pro-competitive measures. Mr Speaker, this bill ensures the continuation of the pro-competitive provisions of DERA under the new market share thresholds and until the new market thresholds are met. There is currently a significant amount of attention in the dairy industry. Fonterra is proposing a capital restructure. The Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry has commenced a review of the raw milk regulations, and the Commerce Commission is considering whether or not an investigation is warranted into the price we pay for milk. With all this going on, it is important that the DERA remains in place and provides a stable reference point for any work being done. Due to the likelihood of the existing market share thresholds being hit within the next season, it is not possible to wait to make these changes to the DERA to coincide with one of the other pieces of work. It is imperative that DERA is still in effect to promote competition and provide a mechanism by which to regulate the behaviour of the major participants in New Zealand dairy markets. The current concerns about the level of competition in our dairy markets strengthen the argument that, in the absence of regulatory provisions contained in Subpart 5 of the DERA, there is unlikely to be sufficient competition in the dairy industry to ensure the efficient operation of the New Zealand dairy markets. I would like to thank the members of the Primary Production Committee for their consideration of the bill and for the report tabled on the 22nd of February 2010. I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.